I'm going to be covering a little bit about the standard development process, what's happening with ISO 20387, and how you, as a possible user of the standard, can apply and look at the draft standard and provide feedback. I think users of the standard is very important to get feedback on the content of the standard, just to make sure that it makes sense and can be used by yourselves. So with that, I'll start off with what is standard. I've looked at the ISO definition. It's they define it as an agreed way of doing something. It defines what great looks like. They're useful for ensuring reliability and building trust. They make lives easier and safer and better. So for consumers of goods and services, you know, it gives them assurance when there's a standard, when products and services comply with the standard. And they ensure that they're reliable and are of a high quality. Benefits, as I've said, well, they provide assurance you're doing the right thing. They build trust for the end user and build confidence. So I suppose in biobanking, if you're providing samples for researchers or other clients, you know, that you're giving them assurance you're doing the right thing. They can assist with trade by eliminating technical barriers, and they can promote interoperability and promote good new technologies and good practice. And in certain areas, they can assist with compliance and legal obligations and regulations. It's very specific in the medical device area. The biotechnology standards aren't, the vast majority of them are voluntary. There's no obligation in support of regulations as yet in terms of putting products on the market. The standard development process, just to give you an idea of what's involved, this is the ISO process, and you can see that we're at the inquiry stage. This process can take about 3 years for a revision or a new standard to be developed. So a work item can get proposed and it has to be agreed by 5 member bodies, and it's the technical group start drafting on it. And Emma Snapes, who's also presented here, is involved in a lot of the drafting. So she's going through this process as the standard progresses. But we're at the inquiry stage, and NSAI has a national draft standard portal where the standard is available, and I'll just go through that afterwards. But if it gets past this stage, the technical content cannot be changed anymore. So this is an important stage to provide feedback and to look at the draft and the technical content. Because if we provide feedback in, the drafters have to look at it and take it on board and try revise the content for the final draft. So this is an important stage. And once it gets past that stage, sorry, went backwards there. Once it gets past that stage, the technical content cannot change. It's only editorial changes between here and here, and then it goes to publication. So just to show you the proposed dates or the timeline that's expected for it. So it opened in October, and it will be available until January, but on our national portal it'll close before Christmas. So you do have a bit of time to, and I get your comments in early, because our national committee will probably look at them early December and try agree what our content would be on the submission to ISO on this draft. And it's expected to be published, you know, mid to end of next year. So the final standard, I'd say it'll probably be around the end of next year that the final standard will be available. So as I've mentioned, it's available on Your Standard, Your Say, and this is just an extract from it. I will provide the link is here for anyone who wants to do it. So you can read the draft here. I'll go to the next stage, next slide, and you can see you just need to generate an account, and by doing that you can just log in or create an account. This is what it would look like when you go in and hit the read the document, and there's a link here where you can just download the draft, and I advise you to go in, download the draft and read it first and mark up and look at what the comments are. And then you can come back to this platform and submit your comments. You can identify the clause. You can make your comment here. You have to highlight what the problem is, what the issue you have is, and then provide a proposed change. And even if it is the fact that you're not sure what they're trying to say, what the intent is, you could record that here and say, you know, it might need clarification. But it's very important you fill both those boxes, because if you leave this one blank, the committee can say, oh, they've highlighted a problem, but they didn't give us any solution, so we're going to ignore it. And there's also a link here to a video on how to use Your Standard, Your Say. So this will be going out to you afterwards. And when you're reading a standard, I think it's important to be aware of the verb usage and what it means. They all have intent and different meanings. Shall indicates a requirement, should indicates a recommendation. And you might say, well, okay, so what? What's the difference? But if you wish to claim compliance with the standard, you have to meet all the shall statements. So the shall statements are very important. The shoulds are more advisory, and may and can or indicate permission or capability. So it's important to bear that in mind when you're reading through the standard. And Suzanne had mentioned it, just to highlight, we do have a National Mirror Committee, NSAI TC62. It is open to membership. To join, it's free. There's an application on our website, and I'll include a link here where you can just register your interest. Being a member of it, you know, it's access to the draft standards. You can find a lot more what's happening in your area. We can facilitate feedback on standards. It can give you insights on the new standards that are happening in your area. It's an opportunity to participate at the international level, and Emma can speak more on that, about the access to international experts that you get there. But it is a very good network of experts, be it national or international. And to highlight the fact that the different working groups are here, they're looking at analytical methods. There's a new subcommittee on microphysical systems and organ on chip. The Biobanking Bioresources is the one that developed this standard on biobanking. There's bioprocessing for cells, data processing and integration, nucleic acid and protein-based devices, and organoids. These are all the groups that are developing standards at the moment. And it's interesting to know that Korea and China are very much on the ball here. So it'd be great to get more European countries involved in this and contributing to it. And finally, last couple of slides, the published standard catalogue is available. So when the standard becomes available, you can search for a standard number or biobanking, put it in here. So when the standard becomes available, you should be able to access from here, purchase it from here. And because it's adopted as a European standard, you should be able to have a preview of the scope and content as well. So that link will be there and provided for you when you get the slides. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. I'll stop sharing now.
Thanks, Linda. That's great to get that overview. We're going to move to our next speaker, who's Padraig Keane. Padraig is joined INAB in 2017, and he is an assistant manager there now. He's also the interim policy lead for ISO 20387, the standard, and also 15189 and also 17034. He's an INAB representative on the EA Laboratory Committee Healthcare Working Group and the EA LC Biobanking Group. And he's previously been a lead assessor and senior assessment manager for many of the ISO standards. His background is in molecular biology, food, water, and veterinary testing laboratories. So Padraig is going to give us an introduction to the INAB accreditation process and the implications of this new revision for ISO 20387 for applicants and for currently accredited biobanks. So thanks, Padraig, if you want to go ahead.
Thanks, Suzanne. I'll just start sharing there now. Let me know. Oops, sorry now. So, okay. Can you now see presentation view there?
Yeah. Oh, good.
Excellent. Great. Okay, so thank you very much. As Suzanne said, my name is Padraig Keane. I am Assistant Manager with the Irish National Accreditation Board. So for those who don't know, INAB is the national accreditation body for Ireland as defined in EU Reg 765/2008. We are a committee of the Health and Safety Authority and lie within the Department of Enterprise, now Tourism and Employment, since it changed last year. We're established in 1985 and we have been part of the HSA since 2014. So accreditation, for those who don't know, is the formal recognition that an organisation is competent to perform specific processes, activities or tasks in a reliable, credible and accurate manner. You can recognise an accredited organisation, or you can recognise a certificate or report issued by an accredited organisation by the fact that they have this INAB accredited symbol on the report, on the certificate, and in now with the Biobank report as well. Accreditation is based on independent assessment of the conformity assessment body to ensure their competence, impartiality and independence. It covers all market sectors, and its independent nature, I suppose, is there to build trust and confidence in the quality and integrity of products and services. Accreditation is awarded to recognized ISO standards by the national accreditation body. So there's obviously quite obvious links between the work that the NSAI does and the work that INAB does in assessing organizations against these international standards. The value of accreditation lies in fact that the certificates, the test results, and the quality is acceptable worldwide. It eliminates the need for multiple assessments when goods cross borders. There's benefits there for the government in that accreditation can be a preferred mechanism for ensuring public confidence in the reliability of activities that impact on all of us, whether through health, welfare, security, environment. It can be used as a criteria to identify bodies competent for the implementation of government policies, regulations as well. For the consumer, the use of accredited organisations, it gives confidence to the consumer through ensuring consistently high standards in the quality and safety of the products or services purchased. For industry, using accredited bodies can also help in, accredited organisations can help in decision-making and management of risk. Organisations can save time and money by selecting an accredited supplier. It eliminates the need for the organisation to perform maybe their own audits of their supplier if they can rely on the fact that they are already accredited for the service that's being provided. It can provide a competitive advantage and facilitate access to export markets within Europe and beyond. The objective of accreditation and the entire network of national accreditation bodies is that a product or a sample can be tested or certified once, and then it should be the result should be accepted everywhere without the need to go through a costly reassessment or reaccreditation process. And finally, for the accredited organisation themselves, as well as access to the markets, it's also objective proof for the organisation that they have the competence to comply with the standard. It confirms that they are following best practice, they're following international standards, and it also is a tool to improve the quality of the service being offered to the customer. So within INAB, as a national accreditation body, we currently accredit 245 separate organisations. The majority of these are testing laboratories. It's ISO 17025. These are laboratories that test food, water, construction materials, and so on. The majority of medical testing laboratories in the country are also accredited. That's ISO 15189. Within the certification side of things, we have 8 body organisations certified for accredited for certification of management systems. These are your standards that you might have seen: ISO 9001, 14001, 45001. We also, jumping down to 17065, we have 24 product certification bodies, and this is tied in with, in many cases, with the EU, the CE marking system. So any product that's CE marked will have gone through some form of product certification, assessment, and process as well. And finally, we have one accredited biobanking facility in Ireland, accredited under the current version of the standard, ISO 20387 2018. INAB is part of European accreditation. So, as I said, there's a network of accreditation organisations within Europe, accreditation bodies within Europe, and then at an international level. So, EA members are officially recognised by the national governments to assess and verify the conformity assessment bodies within each of their countries. EA is responsible for harmonising accreditation within Europe, aiming to reduce trade barriers and protect health, safety and the environment. As Suzanne said, I am the INAB representative on the EA Committee for Healthcare Accreditation and the Biobanking working group as well. So we work to ensure that an organisation accredited within Ireland to the standard, that there are the same expectations of that organisation here as there are in Germany, France, Spain and so on. Because as with any standard, there's always a degree of interpretation of what exactly the standard requires of the organisation. There is a signed agreement between each of the EA members. This is the multilateral agreement, and each signatory member accreditation body agrees to recognise and accept the equivalence of the accreditation systems operated by the signing members, and also the reliability of conformity assessment results provided by CABs accredited by those signing members. So EA isn't just the European Union. There's approximately, I think it's about 40 members within EA at the moment, and membership stretches across from Iceland right across to Georgia in the east. And then at a worldwide level, there are two organizations which are responsible for harmonizing the approach to accreditation worldwide. They are IAF for certification and ILAC for laboratories. And EA is one of the 6 regional cooperation bodies, which obviously cover Africa, Asia, America, North and South. Good news for biobanking. EA is developing a multilateral agreement for biobanking. There are 12 peer evaluations in the field of biobanking scheduled for the next 4 years. So an MLA can only come into effect after there are at least 2 countries which have undergone a peer evaluation. So this lays the ground for a recognition of biobanking accreditation across Europe through EA and eventually worldwide through ILAC as well. Details of our accreditation process for any organizations which are interested can be found on the INAB website. Normally, the process takes 6 to 12 months from initial application to award of accreditation. Organizations can opt to do a pre-assessment if they wish, which is I suppose a more high level, a light touch assessment, just to identify major gaps within the system and confirm that the biobank is ready to go for the full initial assessment within the next couple of months. An initial assessment, depending on the size of the biobank and the scope for accreditation applied for, can take anything from 1 to 4 days. Normally 1 to 3 people on the assessment team who each focus on different areas of the organization. If there are any gaps found at that point, they're recorded as non-conformities, and the biobank will have 3 months to address these through implementation of corrective actions and submission of appropriate evidence to confirm the effectiveness of those actions. It then goes for review and decision by the INAB board. And from then on, the accredited biobank will move into the normal accreditation cycle. So first surveillance visit within 6 months of award of accreditation, and then an annual surveillance every 12 months. As I said, we have had some good news over the past couple of weeks that the Beaumont RCSI Cancer Centre has become Ireland's first accredited biobank, accredited to 20387 2018. At the accreditation assessment, the entire process is assessed at sections 4 to 8 of the current standard. So the assessment team will look for evidence of the competence of the laboratory staff and conformity to the standard. It covers both the quality management system, which is your normal, which is items in section 8 at the moment, document control, control of records, and internal auditing, management of non-conformities, and then obviously the technical areas, which covers items like staff training, handling of samples, retrieval of samples, sending samples out, distribution of samples as well. And we normally break that down between 2 to 3 different technical assessors who will each focus on their own area. Key thing for accreditation is that there is the accredited organization will be accredited for a defined scope of accreditation, and Emma will go into that in a little bit more detail. We focus our assessment on the scope for accreditation that has been applied for by the organization, and then when accreditation is awarded, the scope for accreditation sets out what exactly the biobank or other organization can claim accreditation for. And a normal quality management system accredited to 20387 or the other standards will have standardized processes and procedures. We'll expect to see adequate records. We'll expect a regular program of internal auditing, management reviews. We'll expect, and then for staff, we'll expect to see training records. Any equipment in use, we'll need to see that it's been appropriately calibrated, that there are good records to confirm that that they're working properly, and that there's adequate records as well for the samples within the biobank. Now, there's a few issues around the transition to the new standard, and we have managed these transitions before under for the medical standard 15189 and the laboratory standard 17025, and we'll likely manage to transition from ISO 20387 2018 to the 2627 version in the same way. There's normally a 3-year implementation period. And as I said, we have an established process to manage these transitions. For those of you on this call who are interested in applying for accreditation, there will be a point that you'll need to make a decision on whether you apply for accreditation with us to the old standard, ISO 20387-2018, or you hold off until publication of the new standard and you update your quality management system to meet the newer requirements. And once the standard has been published, INAB, as part of our transition planning, will identify the date by which you need to make that application. Given the time needed to implement a quality management system from scratch, I'd encourage potential applicants to contact us to discuss within the next year or so, because you don't want to put a huge amount of work into putting in place a system that meets the requirements of 2018, only to find that when we come to do the assessment, that we'll be assessing against the new 2026-2027 version. So that is something to bear in mind. If any of you know colleagues within the medical accreditation area, ISO 15189, they went through a similar process over the past 2 years in the transition to the 22 version of the standard. The normal transition timeline is as follows, and this is assuming a 3-year implementation period is agreed. There can be a little bit of uncertainty around that, but it is normally 3 years. In year 1, we organise training of the accreditation body staff, training of our own technical assessors, and an information session for accredited and applicant biobanks. We expect our accredited organisations to complete a gap analysis and identify the changes required. And then the annual INAB assessment will be done to the 2018 version of the standard. From year 2, normally, as I said, there can be a little bit of leeway in this depending on how much progress has been made by the new applicants in developing their system. But normally in year 2, new applications must be to the new version of the standard. And then in year 2 to 3, for accredited biobanks, we expect them to update their systems and processes to meet the requirements of the new version. We'll complete a transition assessment, minimum 6 months before the transition deadline, but preferably 9 to 12 months before that deadline. And the critical thing for those accredited organisations, after the transition deadline, the 3-year implementation period, ISO 20387-2018 will be retired and accreditation to the old version will no longer be valid. So that's it from myself. I hope that was a reasonable overview of accreditation and what to expect when it comes to transitioning from one version of accreditation standard to another. So I'll just stop sharing there.
Thanks, Padraig. That was brilliant. I should have said from the outset, we'll hold questions and answers. We're going to have a full Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions for Padraig, maybe just jot them down and we'll ask them at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, which is Emma Snapes. Emma is a global biobanking strategist, and she's a consultant in bioconsulting with experience across multi-species domains. Emma has been an expert since the start of this National Standards Committee in 2013, and she's worked on the national and international stage, and she's been our #1 representative going to all the ISO meetings from the early days. And she's been involved in the original development and is also very much involved in this revision. She's also a technical assessor for ISO 20387 at INAB. And she has been awarded by NSAI for a role in standards development, and rightly so, because she's been amazing over the years working in this. She's going to give us a selective overview of some of the key changes now in this revision of 20387 and the implications for biobanks that are working to the standard. So Emma, do you want to go ahead and share your slides?
I will indeed, thank you. Let me just do that. Now, hopefully you're...
Yeah, we can see them there.
Okay, great. Funnily, I'm not seeing it at all. Okay,
You got it there?
Yeah, I got him.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much, Suzanne, for that kind introduction, and to Linda and Padraig for keeping to time on this. I am delighted to be here with you this morning to introduce some of the specific changes and revisions that have been made to ISO 20387 and their implications specifically for your biobank, your context. And the one thing I will say is that you will have to bear with me. I'm going to be showing you quite a bit of clauses and text, which can be heavy at times to read. So for those of you who haven't seen the document to date, you might want to go back and look at the specific clauses later on. So hopefully we can get through them without giving you too much of a headache on this fresh Friday morning. So let me just get started here. So first thing to say is that I wanted to let you know that the main changes to the document have already been compiled in a list on page 7 well, it's actually within the foreword of the 2025 DIS version. And this list is easy to miss because it comes after the table of contents. And I had initially missed it myself, and I was like, oh, right, okay. When I thought it was fantastic to be able to see that. And that's really a good thing. If you're familiar with the 2018 version, I would actually go and look at that initially, just to sort of direct you to the changes that you might want to look at initially. But be cognizant that there are other changes to wording throughout the document beyond the changes, the main changes that are listed in that list. What I'm going to go through today is not all of those changes. I just wouldn't have time to do that, I'm afraid. But what I want to do is touch on those areas of revision that are potentially significant for you. I'll give you an overview of the changes to the name, scope, and terms and definitions, the impact of the terms and their definitions on your claim for conformity, or as Padraig called it, the scope for assessment and accreditation, and the clarification that has been introduced for the obligatory biobank activities for that scope for conformity. We're also going to look at a concept that is quite new, which is outsourcing, which is in chapter 6. And we're going to look at the fact that a new normative has been added to the document, and linked to that is the testing element in clause 7.6. And finally, if we get to it, we'll give you an overview of the quite extensive changes to reporting in clause 7.15. So just to reiterate, the name of the document has changed. It is now Biotechnology, Biobanking, General Requirements for Biobanks. So that is to bring it into alignment with other management system standards, because requirements need to apply to an organization, so that's biobanks, rather than an activity, biobanking. This is really going to have low impact on people, but it's something, it's worth noting. Really, it's in the scope where the changes start to get interesting. First of all, you've got a minor inclusion relating to biological material, and that's just to make sure that certain biobanks see themselves for application of the standard. So there's an inclusion of the term of the sentence derived from sources such as environmental samples, with examples as soil, sediment, water, and air. So again, that's really just a clarification for the applicability of the standard. As very significant change to the scope is that research and development specification that was there in the 2018 version has now been removed. So again, this is actually to broaden applicability. So maybe certain types of biobanks that didn't see themselves present as being an audience for the standard maybe can now do so. So they might include surveillance biobanks and other types of biobanks, environmental diagnostic biobanks. So research, and it's important to realize that research and development activities are still relevant to the standard. It's just that the standard is no longer tied just to exploratory and developmental frameworks only. And for those people who are concerned about the potential impact on clinical and therapeutic use, it's important to realize that the note 2 within that scope still applies, and that is for entities handling human materials procured and used for diagnostic and treatment purpose. ISO 15189 and other clinical standards are intended to apply first and foremost. So that has not changed here. And hospitals and other types of biobanks involved in diagnosis and treatment biobanking can actually apply ISO 20387, but initially the most relevant standards are 15189 and other clinical standards. And just to actually mention, there's also been there's an exclusion that has been removed. So the previously the biological material intended for food and feed production and laboratories involved in that sector were excluded from the use of the standard, but that exclusion has now been removed. So it's really down to another technical committee, 34, that was involved in agriculture. They have removed their previous objection to the application because they have seen how successful the standard is and how appropriate it is for their area. So they are they've removed their objection to that. That is a good change. So what we want to look at now is the changes to the terms and their accompanying definitions, and those are in clause 3. So in the 2018 version, we had a total of 54 terms, and that has changed to 62 total, but it's not just a simple increase. Overall, about 27 or more of the terms have been updated, some more significantly than others. 5 terms have been removed and 13 new terms have been added. And some of the terms have greater significance or are going to be of more importance. And some of these have been highlighted here. So I've given a list more or less of nearly all of the updated terms here, but I'll just draw your eye to those in red. Biobanking, obviously that is a fundamental term for the document. And I have linked it, I have also included fit for purpose in red, and you will see soon why that is the same color as biobanking. I will go on to address that again. So I will just say that if you look at what's being added, the new term outsourcing has been added, and there's another new term, oversight. And retrieval as an activity has finally been added, which I am delighted about because I was very frustrated. One of the fundamental activities of a biobank, and it had been not included to date. And you will see the term testing is in blue, and if you look at the removed list, you can see that examination is also in blue. So the term examination has been removed wherever it appeared and is now replaced by testing. Also, what has been removed is the term preparation. And I think for those who are familiar with the 2018 version, you will agree with me that it was a little bit confusing. Much of the definition for that word has actually been incorporated into the updated term for processing. And I think that you will find that it makes a lot more sense now. So first of all, before I progress to show you the impact of further changes, I wanted to remind everyone of the elements that are necessary when declaring a scope for assessment under the standard. So scope is threefold and specific to the individual biobank. So when creating your claim for conformity assessment, you begin by selecting the specific biological material that your biobank wishes to have accredited. Now, be aware that this might not necessarily relate to your entire biobank's collection. And then linked to that, you will need to select the obligatory activities as well as the other activities that you know to impact the fitness for purpose of the chosen biological material and associated data. And then finally, you will need to add the procedures and any meteorological parameters supporting those activities. So the claim for conformity reflects only what will be assessed under ISO 20387. And with the current 2018 version of the standard, the activities to include are at minimum acquisition and storage. So let's now look at the old definition for the term biobanking. So examining the definition of this biobanking term became essential because it really shapes the scope and intent of the entire standard. Every requirement, role, and expectation really flows from that starting point. But this 2018 version resulted in ambiguity for both users and certainly initially for accreditation bodies in terms of what was considered essential or core activities or obligatory activities even. So most assessors focused on the acquisition and storage with one other activity. So you can see it there, process of acquisition and storage together with some or all of the activities related to, and then it gives a list. And then it relates to related to the biological material and information and data. So some thought it meant just the two were obligatory, acquisition and storage. Others thought it meant that two additional activities were required, or one. And then even Italy in the early days felt that all of the activities mentioned here should be in the scope for conformity assessment. So if it's confusing for the assessors, then it's going to be confusing for the users. And this is one of the very first steps that you have to actually do if you're considering going for assessment. So we don't want that level of confusion. That's really a mistake. So also the definition contained no association with quality. And that's likely because quality was included within the scope. And that might be okay if the definition is only ever used in association with the scope. But in reality, the definition is actually shaping up to be the broadly recognized reference point for biobanking outside of the boundaries of the standard now. So that is, it speaks to the success of the standard. And therefore, there were a lot of hours and quite fraught times spent discussing the definition of biobanking over the last numbers of months and couple of years. So it's resulted in a number of key changes. First of all, a quality element to describe the biological material has been introduced. So that's in the first element there, the set of activities aiming at fit for purpose biological material and associated data. Second, it clarifies what the obligatory activities are. So including acquisition, storage, and retrieval of the defined biological material and associated data. And then thirdly, it allows for does not assist on other activities. So with the potential inclusion of one or more of the following: collection, processing, preservation, testing, distribution, destruction, and disposal. And this edited definition now links the fundamental aspects of the document directive, which was actually only ever achieved previously to statements within the technical report, which is ISO 22758, that accompanies that was published in 2020 to accompany the implementation of the 2018 standard. So the definition now clarifies that a biobank is expected to deliver specimens and data that meet a defined purpose. The core activities are now clearly defined and additional activities are listed. And you will notice there that retrieval has been added as an obligatory activity. And I'm delighted to see that it's, as I said, it's an entirely new concept within this document. So also in the 2018 version of ISO 20387, there is a contradiction. Although storage is considered an obligatory activity, clause 6416 provides a possibility where storage can be provided as an externally provided process. So it states when the biobank decides to use externally provided preservation, storing, and/or authentication activities, ... We don't need to see the rest for us to understand the conflict that this has actually created. So within the revised edition that you're able to examine in the public consultation process, the option for this has been effectively eliminated with the first part of the clause 641. The biobank shall not exclusively rely on external processes for any of those processes that are obligatory for biobanking. Now, there might be times when you cannot store all of your samples or material at the site, and the second sentence helps with this. If any obligatory process is outsourced entirely or partly, the biobank shall assess the impact on its claim for conformity with this document. See 511. 511 is to do with the claim of conformity. And this allows for situations where it might be necessary for some of all of the declared biological material to be stored by an external provider, such as for the duration of an emergency. And actually, just to actually show you, looking again at the same clause, we can see that there are two notes that have been helped to clarify exactly what the obligatory processes are again, and when external storage or other core processes might be acceptable, subject to meeting the requirements related to the external services within the document. So really, the requirements significantly negate the opportunity of what could be considered maybe virtual biobanks applying for conformity assessment. And that was people's concerns, you know, what do you have to do to be in order to be considered a biobank? Is there anything that those debates went on for a long, long time? You know, are you a biobank if you don't actually do collection, if you acquire, if you don't store, or if you do store but don't store all, etc., etc. So this really has been cleared up a lot within with these changes, but it's also worth exploring this further, these changes, in terms of how your biobank works and whether you have any material that you consider central to your scope for conformity assessment that you sometimes have to store through an external provider. So look at that again and see how that works for you, and see will that be possible and what it means for you and the impact on your scope for conformity assessment. So there are additional changes as well. I mentioned the term outsourcing has been added, and that is a parenthesis for the title of 6.4, externally provided critical processes and services. And critical, you might remember from your the 2018 version of the document, has been defined and is has had a new note added for clarity. So you might want to revert to that term to look at that, to understand exactly what this whole clause refers to in 6.4. But what I wanted to point out to you is actually the definition for the term outsourcing. So it has been defined as the act of making an arrangement where an organization or entity external from the biobank performs part of the biobank's service or process. So there are a couple of notes but it's note 3 that I particularly wanted to draw your eye to. And what I want you to think about, and this might be relevant for a number of you here, that if you are working in a biobank and you obtain or you collect your samples with the use of surgical staff or hospital staff, this might be relevant for you as to whether you are actually technically outsourcing or not, and whether you should actually claim for both acquisition and collection as an activity. So entities external to the biobank can belong to the same entity as the biobank, and can be or not be within the scope of the biobank's management system. In any case, the oversight of the outsourced service or process remains within the scope of the biobank's management system. So that's quite a bit of a mouthful. And really what it's saying is that where a biobank cannot oversee, the implication is that where a biobank cannot oversee hospital staff collecting tissue or other types of samples, it cannot treat the collection activity as being outsourced. And therefore, it is just acquiring the biological material after collection. So and that's because oversight applies only when the biobank can monitor and influence the process. And there is also a new definition for oversight: ongoing and structured monitoring of the implementation of organizational and governance policies, including monitoring of how associated tasks, services, and processes are managed to ensure they remain appropriate and responsive to internal and external circumstances. So many biobanks that I'm aware of will actually not be able to regard themselves as technically outsourcing that collection to an external provider with their hospital, even though they may regard them as colleagues. So instead, the biobank is simply acquiring material that was collected independently for a primary other purpose. That collection happens outside of the biobank's control, so that the biobank can only manage what happens after it receives the material and not the collection itself. So it's a very specific situation that I just wanted to address here within this. And this is really what was behind this, prompted primarily by a professor, associate professor, the Agnieszka Matera, I hope she forgives me for butchering her name, when she spoke during another webinar that NSAI hosted on ISO 20387, I think it was in 2023, around about this time of the year again, where she explained that they actually thought they were doing the collection, but in reality, they were acquiring the biological material from their hospital colleagues. So this distinction will help to keep your biobank compliant, and if oversight is only required if the process is truly under the biobank's purview. So I will say that there are updates that have been made to clauses 7.2 and 7.3. They are with respect to collection and acquisition and reception that are very relevant, partly to this, but partly just in general. And but I don't have time to go through these in detail now. And really what they've done become is that those requirements are now much clearer in relation to the accountabilities and responsibilities there, and really worth a look. So that's clauses 7.2 and 7.3. So what
sorry, Emma, just interrupt. I see Suzanne has her hand raised there. Sorry, just briefly.
I'm sorry, don't do that.
No, you're fine. I'm only subtly trying to give because we do need to leave. Unfortunately, I know you've got so much information to give.
We'll actually just raise.
If you want to just maybe highlight, and the slides will go out to everyone.
Sure, no problem. There has been a shift in the testing landscape. So testing is one of the activities that your biobank performs, and for which it claims conformity. Measurements or tests conducted under the responsibility of the biobank related to the biological material will be conducted in accordance with the technical requirements of 17025. And the next part goes on to say that you don't actually have to meet the requirements beyond the testing and measurement requirements of 17025 within your biobank if you are declaring testing as one of your activities. But let's just pull that out a little bit further. In 2021, ILAC confirms that ISO 20387 could stand alone, but this addition of ISO 17025 as a normative reference could fundamentally change that. So any biobank that's declaring testing within its scope will be required to meet those measurement and testing requirements in the laboratory testing standard, even if the testing that they perform is limited and low risk. So what you need to actually determine is whether this actually poses an additional barrier to accreditation for your biobank. So whilst there are potentially a number of challenges associated with it, maybe additional resourcing will be needed, there are major benefits, and you have to think of the intent behind these changes for the document. It really will actually have the reputation and stakeholder confidence in your biobank if you actually manage to do this. So I have tried to address this myself and not been successful, but the opportunity now is to address this if you think that you are not, if you have concerns about this element. So if this approach feels unsatisfactory or overly burdensome, now's the time to actually comment during the public phase. So the report requirements, I'll just say that has changed quite a bit. It's extended from nearly 1 page to nearly 4 pages. And it's, I will say, you do need to actually, not all of it applies to everyone's own biobanking context. So it's important that you take time to examine it. Look at the other section references when reading the content, such as the intended audience for the reports and timing of the reports live within distribution. You will have to actually specify which information, which data originates from sources that are external to the biobank rather than having been collected by the biobank. Any testing and data information will have to be aligned to it as well. And there's a lot of requirements about preparation of the report. And I will actually just point out that there are requirements for the digital report to be verifiable for data integrity. So you might want to run this by your IT experts if you are fortunate to have that ability to determine if there are any particular barriers for you. Again, you need to look at the intent behind this to ensure that users understand that the biobank can confidently understand or stand behind what it reports, and that the report is going to the correct stakeholder and that is not going to negatively impact on fitness and purpose for the BMAP. So I will just actually say that much of the content remains unchanged. If you look at chapters 4 and 5, there are smaller changes, chapter 8, smaller changes. So the changes will mean little in terms of day-to-day biobank activities for you, but there are key updates that have been implemented. So you will need to review it carefully to assess the relevance to your own context. And now's the time to take the opportunity to deal with this. So thank you very much for your attention, and my apologies for going over time.
No, Emma, thank you so much. I think it's just a testament to how much information you know and what experience you have. And I think probably everybody would love to hear more from you if time allowed. But I have a couple of questions myself, but I won't be greedy. So I'm going to put it out there, first of all, to anyone else. If anyone wants to ask a question,